right, welcome to episode 2 of the Goober Support Tech Talk podcast. The first one saw the light of day, so we didn't mess up too badly.
Yeah.
So we're coming back, trying again with a second episode here. One good feedback that we got, keep it a little bit shorter. So we're going to keep it hopefully within the half-hour mark now.
Yeah.
At least until we start doing this live and taking some live questions. I could see that running into a little bit more time, but...
You don't look at these two goons talking at you the whole day.
Right. Other thing, there are going to be chapters down below. If you want to skip a topic, you just need to bounce around or even go back and refresh yourself. Those all be time-stamped below. We're going to be talking about New Year's resolutions as we come to the end of January. These are going to be tech resolutions. I'm not going to tell you to go work out or change your diet or anything. That's not my place.
Nope.
But these are all tech-based ideas. How to keep yourself secure, how to keep your devices running happier. This counts for Windows, Mac, mobile, Android, all that.
Yeah.
All of these things, they need a little bit of love, and we're going to try and encourage you to tackle as many of these as you possibly can with the new year and try to form some of these good habits. So we have 5 that we've outlined. I've been thinking on this for a while. Kind of wrote them out here. Half of them, a little bit more cybersecurity focused. It's kind of a big deal going into the new year. And the other 2, they're more just good general practices and things to keep in mind as you use these devices that we've become so connected to every single day.
You can't live without a computer anymore. Can't even go to school anymore without a computer.
Yep. Ask our intern who's not here today. No snow day. Had to do school from home.
Yep. I miss those days. Can't go sledding anymore. You got to get on Zoom.
Yep. Get on Zoom. Let's do it. So the first one that we're going to talk about, we're going to have 5. The first one is going to be passwords and 2-factor. So passwords, best way to keep your account secure. There are some guidelines that are out there. Trust me, I didn't make these up. This is something we know as an industry that we've been going over for years and years and years now. Passwords, you want to keep them varied. You don't want to use the same one on every single account. If somebody gets that one password and they can just jump to the next account and keep using it, it's just going to make it very easy for them to get a hold of every account that you have.
And adding a star on the end doesn't make it a different password.
Yeah, you got to add some different, like very, very different passwords. The other thing is that we have found out that length is actually more important than having all those special characters. Of course, certain websites and accounts, they're going to make you put some of those in. But if you can just make it physically character length wise longer and use more of a passphrase instead of just a password, that's the way I like to say it to keep that kind of idea in your brain. The one, you can make it more memorable, which we're all looking for.
Right.
And 2, you can make it a lot longer and add some of that complexity kind of built into the passphrase itself. The other part of that little addendum to that one is going to be multi-factor authentication or 2-factor authentication. That's kind of the same word for the same thing. But really what's important here is that it's going to provide another way of verifying that you are who you say you are. So these can be either a text to a cell phone, an email to another email address. There are other programs and apps that you can use to actually handle this for you as well. And there's also physical devices that you can get that are like security keys. Yubico makes a bunch of them. There are some other brands out there though. Those can all be multiple ways of proving that you're the person actually trying to log into your accounts. If you have anything with your bank account information on it, or just a lot of information, social security numbers, addresses, all that good stuff, you want to make sure that you have 2-factor on those. It's just going to keep it safe. Make sure it's actually locked down. If you're struggling like we all are, memorizing all these passwords, keeping all these 2-factor codes straight, there are services out there that you can purchase and implement. One of them is 1Password. We use that one for ourselves. We really like that. And we also have a partnership with Keeper, who also does the same thing, and that's the one that we resell.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you are a little bit tech savvy and you want to get your little hands dirty, Bitwarden has a lot of the same features that you can self-host, and that way they're not going out to the internet.
Right. It's all your data.
It's all your data, but that does take a little bit of technical know-how to get set up and working. They do offer a free cloud-based version, but it's very limited on what it does. But, password managers, they're going to store the passwords so you don't have to remember them, and they're going to take advantage of a lot of those two-factor codes. You can actually add those into all three of those programs and stop worrying about all those random text messages that you get all the time.
Next up in our number 2 slot, we have everything about backups. You may be familiar with, your iClouds, your OneDrives. We just want to make sure you're properly using those to their full extent, and then also making sure the data even on those are still secure and still safe for years to come, hopefully, for you. We want to make sure you're always following, we always say your 3-2-1 backup rule, and I know some of you may not know what that actually means. What that is it's 3 different copies with 2 different versions, all at least one of them off-site. That means not where you're at with your laptop, whether it be the cloud or at home or office, somewhere that you're not always going to be. So in case something ever did happen, you always have somewhere else you're storing everything. So with that 3 copies, you want to make sure it's on your laptop, on your OneDrive, and then maybe like an external hard drive, whether you keep that in a fireproof safe or safe to deposit box, something along those lines. Your 2 is your different formats, so you're making sure, again, one's a cloud-based or hard drive, something like that, even tape-based. I know a lot of those VHSs are about to start failing, so you want to make sure even those are still, again, backed up, converted over to DVD or even digital. Some of the services we can provide. So because they're starting to come end of life, they're physically are failing. So, and same with hard drives. Hard drives, they only last 5 to 6 years. So you want to make sure that they're being backed up digitally, either on SSDs or on the cloud.
And a side note to that too, with everything moving to solid state drives, they don't show as many warning signs that they're reaching that end of life as hard drives did back in the day. So with everything going solid state and it's all digitally stored, once those chips start to fail, you can lose access to everything very quickly. And if you kind of don't know the signs to look out for, if you're not really, really tech savvy, that can seem like it's happening overnight, and there might not be a way of recovering any of that data. So
yeah, luckily with hard drives, which unfortunately you have a lot of cons with those, but some of the pros is you do see them start to slow down after a while. Well, SSDs, they keep that speed going for a while. But yeah, luckily, as long as you're doing the backup and, following the 3-2-1 rules, things won't go wrong. Because, imagine you're doing all your critical work and everything, middle of a project or school work, whatever you would have you. Suddenly your computer, power outage, power surge, what have you. And suddenly all your data's gone. You want to make sure at least you're not starting back from scratch. If you have some kind of backup, whether it's OneDrive, iCloud, or what have you.
all right, number 3 is going to be antivirus. This one's kind of funny. We all call it antivirus. We're even guilty of calling it that. That is not actually the right word for it, though. It should be anti-malware, because viruses are only one type of attacks that can be used against your computer. In 2024 now, the security landscape has changed entirely. What used to be very good antivirus programs, they're just not up to snuff anymore. So really we're looking at, there's a lot of buzzwords for it, but next-gen antivirus, and I am raising some air quotes there, EDR, MDR, there's a bunch of different names for these.
Your full alphabet soup.
Yep. But what you're really looking for is that it's not just a definition-based antivirus. What does that mean? But now we're getting like crazy technical here. The way older antiviruses would work is more like a bouncer at a nightclub, and they would have their list. They would have their list of who's allowed in and who's banned from the premises entirely. So everything that's good, good to go. Keep on moving. Everything that's bad, okay, we're going to block that. That's not allowed to run at all. Doesn't really cover any gray area, and it also doesn't allow for those programs to ever go through a double check. So what the newer versions of antivirus are doing is they're still going to do that, because that's a good first layer, But then they're also going to look at your programs and files as they change and in more of an ongoing manner. You could be on the list to get in the nightclub, but then cause trouble once you get inside, right? So we're not going to trust everything just because it's Microsoft Word, for example. If it starts doing something fishy, we're going to block that behavior as well. And there's a lot of good ones out there. We always recommend Bitdefender and Malwarebytes. They're keeping up with those newer styles and those newer definitions. And then we also resell a couple ourselves. We resell Huntress and we also resell MCSoft. And both of those have that kind of next-gen AV EDR functionality that we're looking for to take it more than just that dictionary definition.
Okay, and that makes us move on to number 4, more about maintenance, which kind of covers a lot of things we've already been talking about, but a little more in depth and kind of more about specifically what's going on your computer. You're going to want to always make sure you're doing those updates and all first and foremost. If you're at least doing those updates, you're keeping yourself at least the most secure you can on your machine with the most up-to-date drivers and firmware and everything. Things happen. People discover bugs and issues, whether they're just, cause havoc or minor inconveniences all the way down to, it lets people open up and kind of access your computer or whatever. I know Microsoft not too long ago had a print issue where just they could send a file to what would be your print queue to send things out, and they gain full access to your computer essentially and can upload malicious code and kind of go from there. So, and that was a patch they were lucky to put out before it was fully publicly disclosed and utilized. But sometimes that's not what happens, and sometimes you have to, get the patch after the fact and hope nothing happened while that vulnerability was out in the wild. More things we kind of already talk about is your backup and security software, always keeping those up to date too. Obviously, if your antivirus isn't up to date, it can't protect you. And same with your passwords, always be updating. Along with those is some more general maintenance and just kind of keeping your PC in its best shape. Kind of, the new year you're working out and trying to keep yourself healthy. Same thing for your computer. You always want to make sure you kind of clear out junk files or temporary cache files that if you're not using them anymore, might as well get them cleared out, kind of make more room for some new, fresh data, new data, as they say. And just kind of making sure your computer's physically clean. Obviously, same reason you shower every day. You want to make sure your computer's cleaned off, keyboard's being kept clean, you're not eating over it, or at least you're cleaning up right afterwards, because that can get you in there and get a lot of crumbs in there. And I know with especially those Macs, that can basically ruin them for you.
You use your computer in the shower every day. That's what you said, right?
In the shower. Yeah.
No, don't do that. But they do need to be cleaned out. All that gunk in there.
Yeah. And especially dust, a lot of desktops.
Yes.
We've gotten some desktops in just the other day. We had one, it was sitting in the classroom. You would think not a dusty environment. But oh boy, the bunnies that came out of that guy.
Yep. If you have pets,
Especially
absolutely
pets.
accelerate that. Normally we say every year to 18 months you want to get an actual
Good deep
dusting,
clean.
a good deep clean on the computer. The outside factors, pets, dusty environments, if you use it out in a workshop or something like that, you use it in your garage using woodworking tools or anything.
Yeah.
Definitely accelerate that. You want to do that at least once a year, if not even
More often.
but
quarterly.
you'll kind of learn and catch up with that based on your needs. But all that extra dust, it can lead to extra heat, and that's extra wear and tear.
Yeah.
Just like on a car, keeping your oil topped off.
Yeah, can cause it die early for
Yep.
you. So, and then on top of that, I know the fun topic of rebooting and shutting down at night. It used to be, it goes back and forth. It depends on what tech, what day, and what year you're talking. Whether or not they say it's okay to leave your computer on every day, all day, forever, or if shutting down and leaving it off at night is best, or just a simple reboot. It all depends on the specific use case and what hardware you have in there. But a good rule of thumb we always tell people, weekly. If you can at least get it weekly, that gives you those time to restart, get those updates installed, and also hopefully it doesn't bother you as much. Especially with newer hardware, newer solid state drives and all. They don't have to be shut down all the time. Most times if they're not being used, they're off. They're not making too much work on themselves, but kind of give them a break. Same way you need sometimes a nap at the end of the day. Just give them a break. Shut them down once a week. Get those updates going.
Those shutdowns also help clear out any little weird issues or bugs that have happened in the meantime while you've been using the computer. That's why so often you hear when you get tech support, did you restart it?
Yep.
Well, a lot of times those little bugs, they snowball on themselves. They build up to something bigger, and just kind of shutting down, like Steve was saying, take a little nap, wake back up. A lot of times that can clear out those issues, and you might not even have that same problem when once you actually reboot. It might be fine. So don't need to restart every single day, like you said, once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks if it's something you really use all the time. But at least every so often you got to get those reboots in, updates, and just give it that little break. We're kind of reset everything and start fresh.
Yeah, if you can't remember the last time you rebooted, it's time to reboot. Yeah. So, and then with that, we'll move on to the next topic.
And number 5, this one is more of a stretch goal. This is more of a lofty one. That's why we put it in the number 5 slot. This is going to be your network lockdown. That sounds very intimidating, but I'm going to explain a couple things and we can make it super, super simple. One of the ways that you can get attacked is they get into your home network, or if you're a business, into your business network. This is pretty common. If they can just sit there and listen to everything, they're going to do that. It's the easiest way to get a lot of the data. So, one of the devices we're seeing this happen to a lot, we call them IoT devices, which stands for Internet of Things. So this is going to be your smart cameras, your smart thermostats, your smart fridges, your smart toilets. I don't know what you have, right? But all of these devices, they're made overseas, and sometimes they don't have to go through the same approval process as things like computers, and things slip through the cracks. It can become very easy for one of those devices to report on every single thing that you're doing, even if you're on a different device. Obviously, you're not going on the internet on your doorbell, right? But it can listen in on what's going on. So a lot of routers have the ability to create separate networks, at the very least a guest network, and the idea that you can split out your Wi-Fi signals to be different and separate so that something on one can't see what's happening on the other one. So even if all you have is the guest Wi-Fi, set that up and put a password on it, link all of those types of devices to the guest network. It's not going to be able to talk to everything on your normal home network. Leave that for your computers, your phones, and
printers and whatnot.
Printers and things that you actually need to be on the network. It's just kind of a more precautionary thing, or there's nothing specifically that we're calling out with this one, but if it doesn't need access to everything else, there's no point in it having access to everything else. So once you get to that level, that's kind of like step 1 on this. Then you can separate it even further and further out. But at least from a kind of hobbyist home user level, that's a good place to start. You can look into further things. There's tons of guides on the internet on how to lock down equipment a little bit further. It's going to be different for everybody because you have Comcast, Verizon, Netgear, just so many different brands. It's hard to do like a step-by-step tutorial on that.
Yeah.
But
they may call the same feature several different things, even between several brands.
Yeah. So you might have to do a little further research on that. And if you're a business, you definitely want somebody either on your own internal IT team or a third-party IT team to come through and do that. Lock everything down, separate out what doesn't need to be directly on the network and directly have access. Luckily, on a lot of business-grade equipment, we have even more tools, bells, whistles, and features to be able to separate those out even further, even within the same network. So a lot of cool things that we can do there. But if you're letting all of your devices talk to each other all the time, you got to think on who might be listening on that other end. And that's the end of our New Year's resolutions. We've brought up 5 very important points that I would love if every single person could implement these and form these habits by the end of the year. That would be the dream, the chef's kiss. But if you fall a little bit short, don't worry about it too much. Make sure that that's a priority, but we'll try again next year, right? Hopefully you can employ some help from another computer repair shop or a outside IT company to go ahead and help you along this path, because if you're not doing these 5 things, you are leaving yourself vulnerable to disaster, really. Digital disaster. So thank you so much for listening with us. We'll see you at some point, hopefully next month.
Yeah, hopefully.